Today on Shop Nation, I weigh in on the Shop Fox 14-inch bandsaw after having used it for about a year and a half and tell you what I think. So if you're looking to upgrade your shop with this bandsaw or one similar to it, this video is for you. What's up guys, it's Travis with Shop Nation. Today we're going to do a quick review on my bandsaw. So I'm now at a point where I've used it for about a year and a half in a variety of different ways, and I feel like I'm at a point where I can share with you what I think about it. And as always, I like to start with some context. As you probably know, there's a variety of sizes and capabilities for bandsaws out there. When I was looking for a bandsaw, I was looking for something that was multifunctional. And for me, multifunctional means multi-material. Now I'm going to stop right here and say that this is not a wood and metal bandsaw. They do make those specifically. The biggest difference is that the variable speed allows it to get to a very low speed for cutting metals. This is not one of them. The problem with those bandsaws is they're typically much more expensive, usually at least twice the cost of this one. So in the meantime, I wanted a saw that could potentially do some metal if I really needed it to. And what I landed on is this 14-inch Shop Fox W1706 bandsaw. Now in the world of bandsaws, there's sort of a transition between a 10-inch and a 14-inch. A 10-inch is most commonly a benchtop model, while a 14-inch is usually a floor standing model. I chose to go with a 14-inch more so for the power than the increased rip capacity or throat depth. This particular model uses a 1 horsepower motor pre-wired for 110 volts. You can change the wiring to 220 if you want. It has a throat capacity of 13.5 inches and a max cutting height of 6 inches. You can buy a riser block kit to increase this if you want. What I like about this saw is that it is a 2-speed saw. There's a pulley on the bottom where you can actually change positions to go from an 1800 FPM blade speed to a 3100 FPM blade speed. As a general rule of thumb, metals take lower cut speeds, woods take higher cut speeds. So knowing that this had a lower range of 1800 FPM, which is still far too fast for most metals, I knew that I could probably get away with cutting some metals if I really needed to. I'd probably ruin my blades, but I can get away with it. This saw has cast iron wheels on the top and the bottom and uses a standard 93.5 inch length blade. Now the table can tilt 45 degrees this way and 10 degrees this way, and it also has this really actually nice aluminum fence. Now if we look close at the blade guide, it's actually a tri-bearing setup. So there are 2 bearings on each side of the blade, which is very nice. And then behind the blade is a 3rd bearing, which acts as sort of a thrust bearing. And this setup is repeated on both the top and the bottom. On the back side of the saw is a 4-inch dust port, so you can hook up dust collection to your saw if you so choose. And then finally, the entire thing is mounted on an enclosed, very solid metal cabinet. Now if the characteristics of this saw match up with what you need in your shop, there is another alternative, and it's the Grizzly G0555LX deluxe bandsaw. And it is almost identical to this. Like many tools in the lower and medium duty category, they're often produced by a single company and then rebranded later. Shop Fox has added their improvements and branded it this way. Grizzly has added their improvements and branded it for Grizzly. There are really only 2 big differences that I can see. The first of which is the supports that's on the Grizzly is not an enclosed cabinet, it's more just open legs. I'm sure they're fine, but the cabinet seems really rock solid. The second difference is the rolling blade guides, which look slightly different than the Shop Fox. Everything else looks largely the same. It's a cast iron frame, same table, same cast iron wheels. I'm sure either one is a great saw. I can just speak for the Shop Fox. Now something to keep an eye out for if you're in the market for a saw like this is the wheel material. Most of the bandsaws in this category have aluminum wheels, which aren't necessarily bad, but if you can get cast iron wheels, it is better. So both the Grizzly saw that I previously mentioned and this Shop Fox model both have those cast iron wheels. Okay, so that's all the specs of the saw. Now what do I actually think about it? So we'll start with what I really like about the saw. First of which is actually the customer service. I actually had a warranty claim straight out of the box. So you might be saying, well, that's a negative, it was broken. Yes, that's true. But I also understand that when things are made, especially overseas and shipped and changing hands, stuff happens. So there's a small piece in the tensioning assembly on the back of the saw that was actually broken upon receiving. I was very happy to find out that the customer service number was a US-based call center. That was extremely helpful, and I had my new part within a week. So if you're worried about customer service, I have to say that my experience with Shop Fox has been nothing but great so far. Number 2 has got to be the build quality. It was one of the determining factors of buying this saw over others is that it is just chunky. So as I mentioned, it's got a cast iron base, cast iron frame, cast iron wheels, cast iron table. Did I mention it's heavy? When we talk about weight or mass in tools, that really just means stability. And this thing is rock solid. And finally, the third thing that I really like about this saw is the blade guides. It seems like a weird thing to like, but it's a very important part of a bandsaw. And I'll admit, it took a little bit of a time to get them adjusted just right. but once you do, the thing runs very smooth. And as far as I can tell, after a year and a half of use, I don't really have to readjust anything. And I've been putting this thing through its paces. It's cut anything from wood, plastic, acrylic, even aluminum. I've cut quite a bit of aluminum on this thing. No issues. And now the not so goods. The first not so good, and I'll admit I haven't really used it a whole lot, so I can't say definitively whether it's not good or not, is the dust collection. The dust collection port seems to be in sort of a weird spot that I don't think would really remove all that much. But again, I haven't really even used it, so I'm just saying this out of ignorance, so I could be wrong. And the second is blade tracking. More specifically, blade tracking when using very small blades. The spec sheet of this saw says that it can go down to a 1/8 inch wide blade. However, I've read some reviews that when you get down to that small of a blade, the tracking on this is not exact enough where you can adequately use it. I do have a 3/16 inch blade and it seems to work just fine. So maybe that's the limit for this saw. Just keep that in mind if you are gonna buy this. And the third thing that I don't like, which is again probably the same for most bandsaws in this category, is if you do want to change the speed from that 1800 to 3100 FPM, it's kind of a pain in the ass. The pulleys are located behind the lower wheel. It's not necessarily something you're going to do on the fly. Again, I think this is probably a very common problem with this size and design bandsaw. It's just something that I observed. So, would I recommend this bandsaw? Heck yes, I would. In fact, I would recommend both this one, the Shop Fox W1706, or the Grizzly G0555LX, because basically they're the same saw. In my opinion, in this class of bandsaw, those two models kind of stand out as the best bang for the buck. Each one is about 780 bucks US at the time of shooting this video, but for that money you get quite a bit of tool. I found this thing to be a fantastic tool. I use it all the time, and I get requests a lot to do review on it, so I'm glad I finally got to do it. I hope the review was helpful. If you have this saw or a similar saw and there are things that maybe I left out, please include those in the comments. If this video helped you, maybe in a buying decision, give me a like, consider subscribing. And with every video, I sincerely appreciate you guys for watching. Now, if you're new to the channel, I would urge you to check out some of my other videos, as they all sort of revolve around making your shop freaking awesome. All right, that's gonna do it for this one. I will see you guys on the next project, and until then, always remember to pursue shop greatness.